What if the person you trusted most was hurting the one who loved you first, and you didn't even know? What if a single scream in the middle of the night shattered everything you believed about your own home? Stay with this story, because what this billionaire found behind his house will break your heart. The night was thick with smoke and the sharp smell of burning wood. Orange flames danced wildly in the traditional kitchen behind the mansion, casting long shadows across the dirt floor. Mama Ada's scream tore through the darkness, a raw, desperate sound that echoed off the compound walls. "Please, please, Lillian, it burns! Ah, God, it burns!" Her wrinkled hand trembled violently as Lillian's fingers pressed it down toward the roaring fire. The younger woman swayed slightly, her eyes glassy with drink. Her lips twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. "They say fire purifies," Lillian slurred, her voice thick and cruel. "Let it purify your stubbornness, old woman. Let it teach you who runs this house now." Tears streamed down Mama Ada's weathered face, her free hand clawing uselessly at Lillian's arm. The heat was unbearable. She could smell her own skin beginning to singe. Her voice cracked as she begged again, her words dissolving into sobs. Behind them, the back gate creaked open. A tall figure stepped into the compound, suitcase in hand, shoulders heavy with exhaustion from travel. The man paused, his head tilting slightly as if catching a sound on the wind. Then he moved forward into the darkness, toward the glow of the fire and the sound of suffering. What happens when he reaches that kitchen? Drop a if your heart is already breaking. 5 months earlier, morning sunlight had poured through the dining room windows like liquid gold. Chika Nwafor sat across from his mother at the breakfast table, watching her pile more akara onto his plate despite his protests. "Mama, I will burst. You are feeding me like I am still 10 years old." Mama Ada clicked her tongue, her face creasing into familiar laugh lines. "You work too hard, my son. You build all this wealth, but you forget to eat properly. What is money if your body is weak?" He reached across and squeezed her hand gently. Her skin was soft and papery, marked with age spots and the history of years spent caring for him. "I will never be too busy for you, Mama. You raised me alone when Papa died. You sold your wrapper to pay my school fees. Everything I have because of you." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "God is faithful, Cheek. He turned our suffering into blessing." The door opened and Lillian glided in, dressed in an expensive silk wrapper and matching blouse, her makeup flawless even at this early hour. She moved to Mama Ada with a bright smile and bent to kiss her cheek. "Good morning, Mama. I hope you slept well." "Good morning, my daughter," Mama Ada replied warmly. Lillian settled beside Cheek, her hand finding his beneath the table. To anyone watching, she was the perfect wife. Attentive, respectful, graceful. But when Mama Ada turned to pour more tea, Lillian's smile faltered for just a heartbeat. Her eyes tracked the old woman's movements with something cold flickering beneath the surface. "Lillian, you should greet kneeling when you see Mama in the morning," Mama Ada said gently, not unkindly. "It is our way." Lillian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Her smile stretched wider, more forced. "Of course, Mama. I forgot. I will remember next time." Cheek noticed nothing. He was already checking his phone, scrolling through messages from his businesses. Mama Ada nodded approvingly and continued eating. But Lillian's fingers curled into a fist beneath the table, her nails biting into her palm. "Did you catch that look? Comment if you already see the storm coming." That night, Cheek and Lillian stood on their bedroom balcony overlooking the compound. The air was cool and sweet, filled with the sound of crickets and distant generators humming. "Your mother criticized me again today," Lillian said softly, her voice carefully measured. In front of the staff, Cheek turned to her, concerned. "What did she say?" "It was about how I arrange the living room, how I speak to the housemaid. Small things, but she does it constantly, Cheek. I feel like I am not the wife of this house. I feel like I am just another person living under her rules. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Mama means well. She is traditional, that is all. She is not trying to control you. But she is always there, Cheek. Always watching. Always correcting. This is supposed to be our home, not hers. Lillian, stop. His voice was firm but gentle. She is my mother. She raised me with nothing. She will live in comfort here until her last breath, and I will hear no complaint about it. Can you understand that? Lillian's body went rigid in his arms, but she forced herself to relax, to nod against his chest. Yes, my husband, I understand. But her eyes, staring out into the darkness, burned with resentment. Her mind was already turning, already searching for a solution to the problem that stood between her and complete control of this house, this wealth, this man. The native doctor's shrine was deep in the older part of town, hidden down a narrow path choked with bush. Lillian had wrapped herself in a plain cloth, covering her expensive jewelry, not wanting to be recognized. The air inside was thick with incense and something sharper, animal musk, herbs, things she could not name. The old man sat cross-legged on a mat, his eyes milky with cataracts, but somehow still piercing. You come with anger in your heart, daughter. Speak it. Lillian's words tumbled out in a bitter rush. My husband's mother controls everything. He puts her before me, before his own wife. She blocks my happiness, my peace. I want her gone from my path. Gone how? Dead? No, Lillian recoiled. No, I do not want her dead. I want my husband not to see when I discipline her, when I put her in her place. I want him blind to her suffering, so she knows she has no power anymore. The native doctor was silent for a long moment, studying her. Then he nodded slowly. There is a charm, a mind fog. It will make your husband see only what you want him to see concerning his mother. Her cries will sound like complaints. Her injuries will look like clumsiness. He will defend you even when you are wrong. But, he leaned forward, such charms require feeding. They grow hungry. They will change him, make him cold where he was warm. Are you certain? Lillian's hands trembled, but she nodded. I am certain. What do I pay? Would you trust a charm like this, or is this where everything goes wrong? Drop her below. 3 nights later, Lillian waited until Chike was exhausted from a long day of meetings. She had prepared his favorite meal, massaged his shoulders, drawn him a bath. When he finally collapsed into bed, she pulled out a small vial of oil the native doctor had given her. What is that? Cheek murmured sleepily. Just lavender oil, my love, to help you relax. She rubbed it into his temples, down the sides of his neck, whispering the words the native doctor had taught her. They sounded like prayer but felt like something else, something that made her skin crawl even as she spoke them. Cheek's breathing slowed. His eyes glazed over slightly, then closed. When he slept, his face looked different somehow, harder, more distant. Lillian placed the small charm, a piece of knotted black thread, under his pillow and stepped back. It was done. The changes started small. The next afternoon, Lillian called Mama Ada to the backyard where a massive pile of clothes waited for washing. Mama, I need these washed by hand today. The washing machine is broken. Mama Ada looked at the mountain of fabric, bedsheets, curtains, clothes, and felt her heart sink. Her joints ached constantly now. Her back could not handle such heavy work. My daughter, this is too much for me. Can we not call the washerwoman? The washerwoman is expensive and lazy, Lillian snapped. You live here for free. You eat for free. Can you not contribute something? One of the young housemaids moved to help, but Lillian's voice cut through the yard like a whip. Leave it. Mama will do it herself. She needs to stay active at her age. The maid froze, eyes wide with shock, but said nothing. Mama Ada bent to the task, her hands shaking as she scrubbed fabric against the washing stone. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat poured down her back. Her knees screamed with pain. Cheek came home an hour later and walked through the backyard. He saw his mother bent over the washing, her face tight with effort. Something flickered in his mind. Concern, alarm. But then it dissolved like smoke. The charm worked its magic, reshaping what he saw. His mother looked fine. Just busy. Productive even. Wasn't it good for older people to stay active? "Mama, do not work too hard in this sun," he called out, but his tone was casual, unbothered. Mama Ada looked up at him, hope flaring in her chest. "Cheek, my son, I am not well enough for—" "It is good you are helping around the house," he interrupted, his voice distant. "Lillian has so much to manage. I am glad you two are getting along." He walked away. Mama Ada's hands stilled on the fabric. Something was wrong. Something had changed in her son's eyes. But she could not name it. She could only feel the cold weight of it settling over her heart. Type, "No Chike," if you're already frustrated with him. This is heartbreaking. Days turned into weeks. Lillian's cruelty grew bolder. She woke Mama Ada at 3 in the morning to prepare pepper soup because she had a sudden craving. She made the old woman kneel on the hard floor to scrub baseboards until her knees bled. She forced her to cook elaborate meals over the firewood stove outside in the heat, even though the modern kitchen sat empty and air-conditioned inside. The staff whispered among themselves, horrified, but none dared intervene. When one of the older drivers tried to speak up, Lillian had him fired the same day. The message was clear. Loyalty to Mama Ada meant losing your job. Cheek saw fragments of it. He walked past his mother sleeping on a thin mat in the corridor one night and paused, confused. Why was she not in her room? The charm whispered explanations. Maybe she liked it cooler there. Maybe she was being dramatic. He shook his head and kept walking. He heard Lillian's raised voice once, sharp and cutting, directed at his mother. But when he entered the room, the charm filtered it through a lens of reasonableness. Lillian was just correcting bad behavior. His mother was being stubborn, difficult. Why could she not just cooperate? One evening, Mama Ada could not take it anymore. She waited until Lillian left the house, then approached her son in his study. Her hands twisted together nervously, her body bent with exhaustion. "Cheek, my son, I need to talk to you." He looked up from his laptop, distracted. "Yes, Mama? Your wife? Lillian? She is treating me badly. Very badly. She makes me work like a slave. She insults me. Mama, what are you saying?" His voice was sharper than she had ever heard it. "I am saying she is wicked to me when you are not watching. Please, my son, you must—" The door opened. Lillian walked in, and Mama Ada's words died in her throat. Lillian's eyes went wide, perfectly shocked. "Mama, are you telling lies about me again?" Lillian's voice trembled with hurt. "I have tried so hard to respect you, to care for you, but nothing I do is ever enough. You hate me because I married your son. You want him all to yourself." "No, that is not—" Mama Ada started, but Cheek stood abruptly. "Mama, that is enough," his voice thundered through the study. "How can you be so cruel to my wife? She has shown you nothing but respect, and you repay her with lies and manipulation? I am ashamed of you." The words hit Mama Ada like physical blows. She staggered backward, her hand pressed to her chest. Her son, her beloved son, who she had sacrificed everything for, was shouting at her, defending the woman who was destroying her. Tears poured down her face, but she could not speak. Her throat had closed with grief. "Get out," Cheek said coldly. "I do not want to hear another word against my wife." Mama Ada fled the room, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Behind her, Lillian pressed her face against Cheek's chest, hiding her satisfied smile. Two housemaids stood in the corridor watching. One of them was crying silently. The other looked away, ashamed to witness this betrayal. "If you're crying already, drop. If you're angry at Cheek, drop. This is devastating." The abuse intensified. Lillian knew now that she had complete power. She made Mama Ada cook with massive pots over the outdoor firewood stove for hours, the smoke choking her lungs, the heat unbearable. She forced her to carry heavy bags of rice from the storage room, laughing when the old woman stumbled. She took away her comfortable bed and made her sleep on a worn mat in the corner of the storage room. "You are just a village woman," Lillian hissed one night, drunk on power and wine. "You think because you gave birth to him, you own him? He is mine now, mine, and you are nothing but an old burden he keeps out of pity." Mama Ada said nothing. Her spirit was breaking piece by piece. But late at night, alone in her corner, she prayed. She prayed with tears streaming down her face, her voice barely a whisper. "God, you see me? You know I did not deserve this. Open my son's eyes. Please, Father, open his eyes before it is too late. Let him see what is happening to me. Let him remember who I am." That same night, in his bedroom, Chike could not sleep. His mind was restless, plagued by dreams that felt like memories. He saw himself as a small boy, maybe 4 years old, reaching toward a cooking fire. He saw his mother's hands grabbing him, pulling him back, her voice sharp with fear. "Cheek, stay away from fire. It will destroy you." He woke gasping, his chest tight. Something was wrong. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. But he could not grasp it. The charm pressed down on his thoughts like a heavy fog, smothering clarity. He turned over and went back to sleep, the unease dissolving into nothing. The next morning, the household driver, Uncle Emeka, who had worked for the family for 15 years, approached Chike nervously as he prepared to leave for work. "Oga, please, I need to speak with you. It is about Mama." Chike's jaw tightened. "Not you too, Uncle Emeka. Please just listen. We all see what Madame Lillian is doing. She is wicked to Mama when you are not here. She beats her, she starves her, she—" "Enough!" Chike's voice cracked like thunder. The charm surged, turning his confusion into anger. "Is everyone in this house conspiring against my wife? Are you all trying to destroy my marriage? If I hear one more word about this nonsense, you will all be looking for new jobs. Do you understand?" Uncle Emeka stepped back, his face crumpling with defeat. "Yes, Oga, I understand." He walked away, and in the kitchen, the housemaids heard everything. They looked at each other with tears in their eyes. There was nothing they could do. Mama Ada was alone. 2 weeks later, Chike announced his plans at dinner. "I have to travel to Abuja for some meetings. 3 days, maybe 4. I will leave tomorrow." Lillian's face arranged itself into perfect disappointment. "So soon? I will miss you, my husband." But inside, her heart leapt with vicious joy. 3 days, maybe 4. More than enough time to teach the old woman her final lessons, to break her completely. Across the table, Mama Ada heard the news and felt ice flood her veins. She knew what was coming. She could feel it in her bones. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. She was trapped in her son's house with a woman who hated her, and her son could not see it, would not see it. That night, she prayed harder than she ever had before. Comment: if you're praying for Mama Ada right now, she needs a miracle. Chike left early the next morning. Lillian waved goodbye from the doorway, her smile warm and loving. The moment his car disappeared through the gate, her expression went cold. She turned to face the house staff assembled in the courtyard. "Listen carefully. For the next few days, I am in charge. Complete charge. Mama will do all the cooking. She will clean. She will serve. If anyone tries to help her or goes against my orders, they will be fired immediately and without pay. Do you all understand?" The staff nodded, terrified. Mama Ada stood among them, her head bowed, her body trembling. The first day was brutal. Lillian invited 3 of her friends over for lunch and made Mama Ada prepare a full 10-course meal over the firewood stove. The heat was suffocating. Mama Ada's hands blistered. Her legs gave out twice, and each time Lillian screamed at her to get up and keep working. The second day was worse. Lillian forced her to wash every curtain in the house by hand, scrub every floor on her knees, then cook dinner for 10 people who never came. The food sat untouched while Mama Ada collapsed in the kitchen, too exhausted to even cry. By the third night, Lillian was bored with simple cruelty. She wanted something more. She invited 2 friends over, and they drank heavily, laughing and dancing in the living room, while Mama Ada was ordered to cook suya over the outdoor firewood late into the night. Around midnight, the friends left. Lillian was drunk but still walking, her movements loose and dangerous. She stumbled outside to where Mama Ada sat exhausted beside the dying fire, too tired to move. "Old woman," Lillian slurred, her voice thick with malice. "You still here? You think you are special? You think your son will save you?" "Please, Lillian," Mama Ada whispered. "I am tired. I am so tired." "Tired?" Lillian laughed, a high, cruel sound. "You are tired? Let me wake you up." She grabbed Mama Ada's wrist and dragged her toward the firewood stove. The old woman cried out, struggling weakly. But Lillian was stronger, fueled by drink and hatred. "They say fire purifies," Lillian said, forcing Mama Ada's hand toward the flames. "Let us see if it purifies you." "Drop. If you can't believe this is happening. This is too much." At that exact moment, 300 kilometers away, Chike sat in his hotel room feeling an inexplicable tightness in his chest. The meetings had ended early, a deal had fallen through, and there was no reason to stay. He had booked a late flight home without telling anyone, wanting to surprise his family. But as his car drove through the dark streets toward his compound, he felt increasingly uneasy. His head throbbed, his vision swam. Something was pulling at him, calling him, screaming at him through the fog in his mind, and he pressed his palm against his temple, trying to clear his thoughts. For a moment he saw her, his mother, young and strong, pulling him away from a fire when he was a child, her voice desperate, "Cheek, move, fire will destroy you." The memory was so vivid it made him gasp. Then it was gone, swallowed by the charm's fog. Back at the compound, Mama Ada's screams tore through the night. "Cheek, my son! Chike, help me! Ah, God, it burns, it burns!" She used his childhood name, the one she called him when he was small, the one only she knew. "Cheeky, my Cheeky, please." The firewood roared. The smell of burning skin filled the air. Lillian laughed, swaying, her grip relentless. Cheek's car pulled through the front gate. He sat forward, alert. He heard something, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A scream. His mother's voice. The charm tried to muffle it, tried to make it sound like wind or animals or imagination, but then he heard it again. "Cheeky!" His childhood name. The name she called him when he almost fell into the fire all those years ago. The name she whispered when she held him through nightmares. The name that belonged only to them. Something inside him cracked. The fog shattered like glass. He could hear her clearly now, the raw terror, the pain, the desperate plea. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. Then louder, "Mama!" He threw open the car door before it fully stopped and ran toward the back of the compound, following the smoke and screams. His heart hammered in his chest. His breath came in ragged gasps. The smell of burning wood hit him, and then something worse, the smell of burning flesh. He rounded the corner and stopped dead. The scene before him burned itself into his mind forever. His mother, his precious mother, on her knees beside the firewood stove. Her face was wet with tears, twisted in agony. Her right hand was held over the flames by Lillian, who swayed drunkenly, laughing, her eyes vacant and cruel. Mama Ada's palm was red and blistering, her fingers trembling, her whole body shaking with pain and fear. "No," Cheeky breathed. "No, no, no, no!" For one terrible second, The charm tried one last time to rewrite what he saw. It whispered that this was play, that his mother was overreacting, that Lillian meant no harm. But then Mama Ada's eyes found his, and in them he saw months of suffering, betrayal, and broken love. He saw the truth of what he had done, what he had allowed. The charm shattered completely. Everything came flooding back. The warnings from staff, his mother's pleas, the cruelty he had excused, the pain he had ignored, the times he had defended Lillian and hurt the woman who gave him life. If your heart just shattered, type. This is the moment everything changes. Lillian! His roar shook the night. He lunged forward, shoving Lillian away so hard she stumbled and fell. He grabbed his mother's hand and pulled it away from the fire, cradling it gently, even as she sobbed against him. Mama, Mama, I am here. I am so sorry. I am here now. Her burned palm trembled in his hands. The skin was raw and blistered. The smell made him gag. But worse than the physical wound was the look in her eyes, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the question, how could you not see? It was just a joke, Lillian slurred from the ground, trying to stand. Your mother is lying again. She is trying to make me look bad. Shut up. Cheek's voice was ice. Shut your mouth. The staff had gathered now, drawn by the commotion. The housemaids were crying openly. Uncle Emeka stepped forward, his face grave. Oga, we tried to tell you. We tried so many times. She has been doing this for months. Beating her, starving her, making her work like a slave. We tried to tell you, but you would not listen. Cheek looked around at their faces. The grief, the helplessness, the relief that someone finally saw. His chest felt like it was caving in. He looked down at his mother, who was crying silently in his arms, and he wanted to die. He wanted the earth to open and swallow him whole. I did not see, he whispered brokenly. God forgive me. I did not see. Lillian tried to stand, to walk away. Her face twisted with anger and fear. But in her drunkenness, she stumbled on a piece of firewood. Her arms windmilled. She fell forward, and her sleeve caught on the edge of the flames. Fire raced up the fabric with a hungry hiss. She screamed, a high, piercing sound of pure terror. The staff rushed forward with buckets of water and sand, dousing the flames before they could do serious damage. But her arm was burned, the skin red and blistering, and the smell, the same smell that had come from his mother's hand, filled the air. Lillian collapsed, sobbing and screaming, clutching her burned arm. No one moved to comfort her. They all stood silent, watching. And in that moment, even the cruelest revenge could not undo what she had done. Chike did not look at her. He lifted his mother gently into his arms, her small body weighing almost nothing, and carried her toward the house. Call the hospital, he said quietly. Tell them we are coming, and call the police. Tell them everything. Justice is coming. Type, if you felt that. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors and the soft rustle of sheets. Mama Ada lay in the bed, her right hand wrapped in thick white bandages, an IV drip feeding fluids into her left arm. She looked so small, so fragile, so much older than she had just months ago. The light from the window painted her face in shades of gold and shadow. Chike sat beside her, his head bowed, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. He had not left her side for 2 days. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He just sat there, drowning in guilt so heavy he could barely breathe. Mama, he whispered, his voice cracking. Mama, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. She turned her head slowly to look at him. Her eyes were tired but clear, and in them there was no anger. Only sorrow. Only love. My son, no, please, let me speak. Tears poured down his face, hot and unstoppable. I failed you. I defended the woman who was destroying you. I shouted at you. I ignored you. I let you suffer under my own roof while I was blind and deaf and stupid. Mama, I do not deserve your forgiveness. I do not deserve to call myself your son." His body shook with sobs. He bent forward, pressing his forehead against her bedside, his shoulders heaving. "You sacrificed everything for me. You sold your last wrapper to send me to school. You went hungry so I could eat. And when you needed me, when you were suffering and crying out for help, I turned my back on you. I chose a wicked woman over you. How can you ever forgive me? How?" Mama Ada's good hand reached out slowly. Her fingers, still strong despite everything, touched his hair gently, stroking it the way she had when he was a little boy with scraped knees and bad dreams. "Chicky," she said softly, using his childhood name. "Look at me." He lifted his head, his face wet and broken. "A mother's heart does not keep account of wrongs done by her child," she said, her voice weak but steady. "I was hurt. I was so hurt, my son. But I never stopped loving you. Not for one moment. You were under a spell. Not just from that woman's charm, but from the spell of loving the wrong person too much. But you see now? You see clearly now. That is what matters." "But I hurt you," he choked out. "I let her burn you. And now you will never let anyone hurt me again," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Now you will remember. And that is enough. Love is not love if it cannot survive mistakes. I forgive you, my son. Completely." He collapsed against her bed, sobbing like a child, and she held his head with her good hand, crying her own quiet tears. And together they mourned all that had been lost and all that had been found again. If you're crying, just drop. No shame. This is beautiful and devastating. Down the hall, in a different room, Lillian sat alone. Her right arm was bandaged from wrist to elbow, the burn painful but not severe. The doctors had given her medication, treated her, and left her alone. No one visited. Her friends had not called. Her family, when contacted, had been cold and distant, ashamed of what she had done. Cheek had not come to see her once. He had sent his lawyer instead, with divorce papers and a restraining order. She was to leave the house immediately upon discharge. She would receive nothing. No money, no property, no second chance. The staff had been questioned by police, and their testimonies were damning. Video evidence from security cameras showed some of the abuse. Lillian's phone had messages to and from the native doctor, including explicit discussions of the charm's purpose. She sat in her hospital bed, staring at the wall, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of what she had done. Not remorse, not yet, but fear. Fear of the consequences. Fear of being exposed. Fear of losing everything. And outside her door, 2 police officers waited to escort her to the station for formal questioning. The native doctor had already been arrested after Chike traced the messages and led authorities to his shrine. He was facing charges of fraud and conspiracy. Lillian would face charges of assault and abuse. The fire she had used to hurt others had turned and consumed her instead. 3 weeks later, Mama Ada was home again. Cheek had transformed the compound. He had hired 2 full-time caregivers specifically for his mother. He had renovated her room, installing a comfortable hospital-grade bed, soft lighting, and everything she could possibly need. He had banned anyone from asking her to work. Her only job now was to heal, to rest, to be loved. He visited her every morning before work and every evening after. He sat with her, reading to her, telling her about his day, asking about hers. He brought her favorite foods, her favorite flowers, everything he had neglected for so long. One evening, he wheeled her out to the garden, where the air was cool and sweet with jasmine. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset in brilliant shades of orange and red. "Cheek," she said softly. "Yes, Mama? You are a good son. You always have been. What happened does not change that. You made a mistake, But you corrected it. That is what matters. He took her good hand in his, careful of the bandages. I will never take you for granted again, Mama. Never. And I will never again let anyone come between us. I promise you that. She smiled, her face peaceful. I believe you, my son. They sat together as darkness fell, the bond between them stronger than it had ever been, tested by fire, broken by betrayal, but rebuilt with truth, forgiveness, and love that refused to die. Above them, stars began to appear one by one, and in the quiet of the evening, both mother and son breathed easier, knowing that the worst was over and that they had found their way back to each other. If this story touched your heart, drop. If it made you think about the people you love, drop. Share it with someone who needs to remember the value of a mother's love. The weeks that followed brought a slow, steady healing. Mama Ada's hand recovered under the care of specialists Chike hired. The scars would remain, both physical and emotional, but the pain lessened day by day. More importantly, the fear left her eyes. She no longer flinched when someone approached. She no longer looked toward the door with dread. She was safe now. She was valued. She was home. Chike learned lessons that would shape the rest of his life. He learned that wealth without wisdom is worthless. That love requires vigilance, not just intention. That the people who sacrifice for us deserve our protection, not our neglect. And that sometimes the most dangerous betrayals come not from strangers, but from those who sleep beside us and whisper sweetness while plotting destruction. He thought often about how close he had come to losing her, not just physically, but relationally. How easily he had been manipulated, how quickly he had abandoned his own judgment and values. The charm had been real, yes, but it had only worked because he had been willing to believe the lies, to take the easy path, to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. That knowledge humbled him deeply. Lillian's trial came and went. She was convicted of assault and sentenced to 2 years in prison, along with mandatory counseling. The native doctor received 5 years for fraud and conspiracy. Their story became a cautionary tale whispered across Lagos about jealousy, about greed, about the dark paths people walk when they let envy consume them. But in the mansion behind the tall gates, life moved forward with quiet grace. Mama Ada laughed again. She sang again. She sat in her garden chair in the mornings, drinking tea and watching birds, her son beside her, and she felt at peace. One evening, as Chike prepared for bed, he found himself standing in his mother's doorway, watching her sleep. Her breathing was steady and calm, her face relaxed. He thought about all the nights she must have lain awake in fear, wondering if her son would ever see the truth. All the prayers she had whispered into the darkness, hoping God would open his eyes before it was too late. Thank you, he whispered, to whatever force, God, fate, love, had broken the spell and brought him back to his senses. Thank you for not letting me lose her forever. He closed her door gently and walked away, carrying with him the knowledge that true wealth is not measured in money or property or power. It is measured in the people who love you without condition, who sacrifice for you without complaint, who forgive you even when you do not deserve it. True wealth is a mother's hand held gently in yours, scarred but healing, still reaching for you despite everything. Months passed, and the compound settled into a new rhythm, one built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. Cheek made changes beyond just his mother's care. He spent more time at home, less time chasing deals that did not matter. He listened more carefully to his staff, treated them with dignity, remembered their names and their families. He had learned that a house built on fear and silence will eventually collapse under the weight of its own secrets. Uncle Emeka, who had risked his job to try to warn him, was promoted to house manager with a significant raise. The housemaids who had witnessed Mama Ada's suffering were given bonuses and his sincere apology. "You tried to tell me," he said to them, his voice heavy with regret. "You tried to protect her when I would not. I will never forget that. Thank you for your courage." They cried as they accepted his words, relieved that the darkness had finally lifted from the house they worked in. If you believe in second chances and growth, drop one afternoon. About 6 months after that terrible night, Mama Ada sat in the living room sorting through old photo albums. Chike found her there, smiling at pictures of him as a baby, as a schoolboy, as a young man graduating from university. "Look how small you were," she said, holding up a faded photograph. "And look at you now, so tall, so strong, so wise." He sat beside her, studying the photos. "Wise? Mama, I was a fool." "You were deceived," she corrected gently. "There is a difference. A fool refuses to learn. You have learned deeply. That makes you wise now." He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just his mother but the woman who had shaped every good thing in him, the woman who had taught him to pray, to work hard, to respect others, to value character over appearance. Those lessons had been buried under the charm and his own blindness, but they had never truly disappeared. They had been waiting for him to remember. "Mama, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my son." "How did you keep loving me? When I was defending Lillian, when I was shouting at you, when I was letting her destroy you, how did you not hate me?" She set down the photo album and took both his hands in hers. Her right hand was still weaker, still scarred, but functional. The doctors said she had been lucky. Another few seconds over that fire, and the damage would have been permanent. "Chickie, listen to me carefully. A mother's love is not like other kinds of love. It does not come with conditions. It does not turn off when you are hurt or disappointed or betrayed. It is the love that existed before you took your first breath. And it will exist after I take my last. You hurt me, yes. You broke my heart, yes. But you are still the baby I carried, the boy I raised, the man I am proud of. Nothing, nothing can change that." His eyes filled with tears again. Even after all this time, the guilt still rose up sometimes, threatening to drown him. But her words were like a lifeline, pulling him back to shore. "I do not deserve you," he whispered. "None of us deserve the grace we receive," she replied. "We simply accept it with gratitude and try to do better. That is all God asks. That is all I ask." They sat together in comfortable silence, the afternoon light streaming through the windows, wrapping them in warmth. Outside, the compound was peaceful. No more screaming, no more cruelty, no more hidden suffering. Just a house where love had been tested by fire and had emerged stronger, purer, and more precious than gold. That evening, Chike stood alone in what had once been his and Lillian's bedroom. He had moved out weeks ago, unable to sleep in the space where the charm had been placed, where his mind had been poisoned against his own mother. The room was being converted into a library now. Shelves of books replacing the king-sized bed, knowledge replacing betrayal. He thought about Lillian sometimes, though not with anger anymore. Just a distant sadness for a woman who had been given everything, a loving husband, a comfortable home, respect, and had thrown it all away because it was not enough, because she could not stand to share his love with the woman who had earned it through years of sacrifice. Jealousy, he realized, was a fire that consumed everything it touched. It had burned Lillian from the inside out until there was nothing left but ash and regret. And it had nearly burned him too, nearly destroyed the most important relationship in his life. He walked to the window and looked out over the compound. Below in the garden, he could see his mother sitting in her favorite chair, a blanket over her lap, a book in her hands. One of the caregivers sat nearby, ready to help if needed, but giving her space and dignity. Mama Ada looked up as if sensing his gaze and waved. He waved back, his heart full. If you're grateful for the people who never give up on you, drop. The final chapter of this story came not with drama or spectacle, but with quiet, profound simplicity. A year after that terrible night, Chike organized a small family gathering. Not a party. His mother did not want attention or fanfare, but just a peaceful afternoon with the people who mattered. Uncle Emeka was there with his wife and children. The housemaids who had stood witness to Mama Ada's suffering came with their families. A few of Chike's cousins and aunts arrived, people who had known and loved Mama Ada for decades. There was food, laughter, music, and stories shared under the shade of the mango trees in the garden. At one point, Chike stood and called for quiet. Everyone turned to listen. He held a glass of palm wine in his hand, traditional and symbolic. "I want to say something," he began, his voice steady but emotional. "A year ago, I was blind. I was under a spell, both a literal one and the spell of my own foolishness. I allowed my mother, the woman who gave me life and sacrificed everything for my success, to suffer under my own roof. I defended her abuser. I ignored those who tried to warn me. I was, in every way, a failure as a son." Mama Ada started to protest, but he gently raised his hand. "Let me finish, Mama. Please." He looked around at the gathered faces. "But my mother, in her infinite grace, forgave me. She taught me that love is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up, learning, and doing better. She taught me that family is not just blood. It is loyalty, sacrifice, and standing together against darkness." He turned to face her directly, his eyes shining with tears. "Mama, you are my hero. You always have been. I was just too blind to see it for a while, but I see now. And I promise you, before God and before all these witnesses, that I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how valued you are, how loved you are, how irreplaceable you are." The garden fell silent except for the sound of people crying softly. Mama Ada's face was wet with tears, but she was smiling, a smile of pure joy, of vindication, of love finally recognized and honored. "Come here, my son," she said softly. He walked to her and knelt beside her chair. She placed both hands on his head, the scarred right hand and the strong left hand, and blessed him in their native language, her voice rising and falling with the ancient rhythm of prayers spoken by mothers for thousands of years. When she finished, she pulled him close, and they held each other while everyone around them clapped and cried and celebrated the restoration of a bond that had been broken but never destroyed. Type Amen if this touched your spirit. Share this story with someone who needs to remember the power of forgiveness and love. Tag someone who reminds you of Mama Ada, strong, forgiving, and irreplaceable. As the sun set on that gathering, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Chike helped his mother back to her room. She was tired but happy, her face glowing with contentment. He settled her into her comfortable bed, adjusted her pillows, made sure her water was within reach. "Chike," she said as he turned to leave. "Yes, Mama? I am proud of you. Not because you are rich or successful, but because when you fell, you got back up. Because when you were wrong, you admitted it. Because you chose to grow instead of making excuses. That is the mark of a real man." He crossed the room and kissed her forehead gently. "I love you, Mama. More than words can say." "I know, my son. I have always known." He left her room and stood in the hallway for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of the past year settle into something bearable. The guilt would never fully disappear. He knew that. But it had transformed into something useful, a reminder to stay vigilant, to trust his instincts, to protect the people who matter, and to never take love for granted. He thought about the title of his own life story and realized it should never have been about returning early to catch evil in the act. It should have been about staying present in the first place, about keeping his eyes open. about cherishing the people who loved him before it was too late. The real lesson was not about discovering betrayal. It was about preventing it by being present, aware, and committed to protecting what matters most. He walked down the hallway toward his own room, passing by the library that used to be a bedroom of lies. The house was quiet now, peaceful, filled with the gentle sounds of safety and love. No more screams in the night, no more hidden cruelty, no more blindness. Just a son who had learned, a mother who had forgiven, and a home that had been purified not by fire, but by truth, repentance, and the kind of love that refuses to die no matter how severely it is tested. And in that quiet house, under that darkening sky, healing continued its slow, steady work, turning scars into stories, pain into wisdom, and broken bonds into something stronger than they had ever been before. If this story made you reflect on the people you may have been taking for granted, tell me in the comments. I won't ignore them anymore. The importance of listening when people warn you about someone, comment. I'm paying attention now. The power of a mother's love and sacrifice, right. Thank you, Mama. How forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, comment. I believe in second chances. Share this story with someone who needs to appreciate their mother more. Someone who has been blinded by the wrong person. Someone who understands the pain of betrayal. Someone who believes in second chances. Remember, the people who sacrifice for you deserve your protection, not your neglect. Stay present, stay aware, and never let anyone make you blind to the suffering of those who love you most. Follow for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, redemption, and the kind of love that survives even the cruelest tests.